In the town there is a little chapel, in the little town by the sea. Come and see the pretty flowers, but don't tarry without me. In the town, in the chapel, beware the lady green and free. Linger not within her garden, for your fines will not be liberty. If you visit the garden's chapel, if you spread your gaze below, do not seek the skyline's favor, for all you seek pulls the toes. Sometimes mortal nursery rhymes are instructive. Sometimes they are fun. But the ones with truth buried in them should cause your mortal charge to run. And such is the case of the flower and chapel rhyme. This rhyme does not occur in every universe, nor does it always contain such cadences or lyrics. But the flower and chapel rhyme does appear in the universes where Mary and Martha Margrave both lived as children. There is no case of a pairing of Mary and Martha Margrave where both live past the age of 12, nor is there a universe in which one does not either viciously or by accident sacrifice the other to attain this auspicious age limit of their twin pairing. In the case of Mary Margrave in the Mayor Cumberland universe, the sacrifice was a vicious thing, premeditated. And if you ask Mary why, she would honestly say that she could not remember. Only the impending pressure and sense of needing to accomplish the task. Perhaps she would say the flowers behind the abandoned church were thirsty. She uses the word thirsty when speaking about Martha a lot, about Martha and her expectations of life, of how much she wanted, of how free she seemed, unbridled, untethered. But Mary Margrave did not feel that same sense of freedom. From the moment of their birth, it was clear that Mary was more serious, more studied, in some ways more beautiful, made by her sharp, decisive nature. And by the time their parents had gone missing, as in many universes such things happen, there was very little hope for Martha herself. But the house was paid for, and they had glockenspiel classes, so no one considered them orphans. The town came together to console. They left casseroles, first for Mother Margrave, and then for Father, and then for dear, sweet, unbridled Martha. There were casseroles with meat, casseroles topped with sweet potatoes, casseroles with a bite of parsley, casseroles very much like a lasagna dish. The casserole as an expression of mourning and community and life should not be forgotten. In the case of mortal causes, casseroles provide a yearning spot, a way to bring together disparate parts of the kitchen, just as in disparate parts of the community. It is in the blending, in the molding. Mary Margrave's last dish was a casserole with great hunks of ham and melted cheese, and bring pockets of bursting yellow corn. There were sweets, too, round bunts, crispy, spicy, sparkling coffee cakes, sweet, dark chocolate brownie squares. Mary can still see the yellow of the cupcake frosting in her mind's eye when she dwells on the past, delicate and bright as a bird on a dewy spring morning. Those cupcakes sat on the counter of the kitchen. She ate them in quarters, day by day, in the silence of her home. And then, with her family gone, she found she could keep her duties. Mary Margrave considers herself the keeper of the books and of the lore of Surf City. She is distracted by nothing, and has very little in the way of possessions that she did not have as a child. The only additions were clothing that suited her properly as she grew, though nothing that inclined her towards tomboy or feminine fashion. It was as though she was a being cast in a live-action version of the Music Man as Marion Peru, the librarian. Only no one bothered to tell anyone else, either in the town or in central casting. And then there is the matter of the missing gong in which she is involved. Grandmother Gong came through Surf City as part of an exhibition of great Asian works. There were mighty dragons in brass that slithered in perpetuity. There were screens and colors, pops of red, terracotta statues and pleas in incense. There were white birds with sharp wings. And this gong, this curious, sturdy, working gong that was somehow grubby, in spite of archaeological and historical attempts to clean it. There was a ring of black just within it that seemed to create a smaller gong with the border of a much larger round brass frame. It never did leave town. The only other person that knows where Grandmother Gong is a man called Greengrass Velvet, who is Mary Margrave's next-door neighbor and former landlord. Greengrass Velvet is the young son of the man who was the landlord of the Margrave family when there were 3 of them, and they'd just moved into Surf City. Greengrass Velvet is more than in love with Mary Margrave. He is afraid of her. He does her bidding. He watches the mayor for her. Mary Margrave does not care for Mayor Julie Cumberland. In the beginning, it was in the same way that she did not care for others. It was nothing new as a feeling. Mary Margrave has always felt that she was studious, and therefore better. Mary Margrave finds her worth and her strength in books, in intelligence, in the recitation of the oral traditions of the universe. Mary Margrave is fluent in 14 languages, but has only spoken 2 in public. There is one Mary Margrave in a particular universe who is the host of the Trivial Pursuit game show challenge. But that Mary Margrave speaks and moves as though Katharine Hepburn would live until the stars burn out, and she is so wildly charismatic that many lose their breath and faint in her gravitational presence. That is the one Mary Margrave who has committed no murders, at least when she remembers to take her nightly pill. And curiously, there is one Mary Margrave for whom there are no stories about at all, a Mary Margrave who never lived with a family that she can remember, nor has seen this ocean. This Mary Margrave was born in Mexico in a cult into which she was shown the center of the universe. This one Mary spends her time writing poetry about the dualities inside of her, begging those who would seek war to stop before they hurt themselves further. But our Mary Margrave lives in our Julie Cumberland mayoral universe. This living Mary Margrave, in a world where the color and the quality of the air is not quite right, loathes the mayor and the librarian, and still sometimes visits the church, which is no longer abandoned, but oftentimes instead will send Greengrass Velvet with a bucket of body parts to that sacred space. She uses Grandmother Gong to signal Greengrass Velvet, who will appear at her door wearing a cardinal knitted by Swedish Lutherans. It is cream with large Norwegian-style buttons. Greengrass Velvet wears heavily tinted glasses that allow him to see a little, otherwise he is blind beyond belief from a life of chain-smoking clove cigarettes. He only walks 2 familiar paths, one to the grocery store and the bank, which crosses with the forsaken library, and the other to the gardens of the church, in the breezy place between the parish house and the land of the saint in green. There is a shed beyond the garden there, in the breezeway between the 2 spaces, in which the father of the church has no key and cannot seem to tell of its existence. When asked about it, he fumbles for words and then excuses himself. His body shakes, and he does not know why. It is a good way to get Father Verrick-Omer to leave a conversation if he tarries. But Mary Margrave and Greengrass Velvet can see what is in the shed, and they throw meat to the thing chained within. A bucket of parts, indiscriminate, usually organ of some kind and muscle, depending upon the harvest, just enough to keep the thing alive. The thing drinks rainwater that comes in through the slats of the shed, and sometimes the moss and the snails that grow in through the ventilation. The snow packs in well enough into the slats in winter that he is nearly as warm as in summer. And sometimes it is hard to believe that the dear father does not hear the weeping or bellowing or crying, the ghastly sound of chewing and the squelch of liver on the bucket delivery days. But Father Verrick-Omer cannot see the shed, because of the deity, because of the lady in green, the dazzling lady, she who walks among us, who came after the garden had been planted and watered by Red. Mary Margrave taught Greengrass Velvet to shoot a weapon. She also attempted to teach the poor, pale thing in the shed, but the dexterity required, who requires such a commitment, that she was not willing to make in this instance. Greengrass Velvet knew that when he missed the mayor, that he was likely to die by his beloved's hands. He didn't mind so much, except the vision of being eviscerated by the large jaws and the pale baldness of the thing in the shed was too much. Mary Margrave will not miss him, for her true love is not a man. Her true love is no lady in green, no deity either. She believes in facts and in keeping the gate clean and the way paved. There are many in town who test her, and the darker Greengrass Velvet's shadow grows, the more she is liberated. The thought begins one night as the gong rings in her mind. She removes the bolt cutters from her walls and tests them and their heft against the gong. The noise is different, more dull, down-tempo. She wonders if there is another shed, one for the librarian who will not claim their place, the one who gives permission to others to see her texts, who allows, under their eye, the mayor, this Julie, to leave and return with borrowed books, who teaches knowledge she has no business of. She reflects that she does not know, Mary Margrave, if the thing in the shed has ever lived outside of the shed, if the thing in the shed has had a name. She has not called him a name, or gifted him with one, and yet he is just a few years younger than her, that she knows of. But in a war, the unexpected is often what gains victory. And what Julie Cumberland does not know is that war has been declared, and Mary Margrave intends to feed the flowers red again. Surf City is an audio work of John MacDonald and John MacDonald Productions. It is meant for entertainment purposes only and is not meant to advise anyone on lifestyle, health, or spiritual/philosophical issues of their or any time. All opinions expressed are held by the characters and in some cases the creator of Surf City and Surf City Donuts, John MacDonald. Season 2's cosmic narrator is Jack Wicks.